Now everybody wants to talk about flowers, and I do a lot of videos about the flowers in my gardens. However, if you have shady or part sun sort of situations that you're looking to put plants in that are beautiful and that are long-lived, long-lasting, ferns may be your solution. And I've incorporated 8 different types of fern in my gardens that I'd like to show you today, and hopefully you'll come to appreciate them as much as I do. There's also a couple of lookalikes we'll take a look at as well. Now this is the path that runs next to my raised bed vegetable garden, and though it's early in the morning and we're in shade right now, this whole area is going to be in bright sun for most of the day. And the plant that's on the corner of the pathway is a Christmas fern. Now talk about a long-lived plant. This fern has been growing here for literally 30 years. And it's beautiful. Now this area does get quite a bit of water. It is within our irrigation system, and we do irrigate the vegetable garden, at least when the weather is very hot. So it does get the benefit of that. And you can see that right behind it, there's a large rhubarb plant growing. So I always say to take a look at what a fern is growing near and thriving, what's thriving around it, to get an idea of the conditions that it will be happy in as well. This area of the garden I don't show very much. This is what we call our woods walk. And as you can see, it is an area that has some very, very large trees. So it has a lot of dappled sunlight. And it is a great place for growing ferns. Now here is some lovely ostrich fern, named because it is very tall and it sort of looks like, I guess, ostrich feathers. This is a North American native, and it does spread through underground rhizomes, although not quite as rapidly as something like a hay-scented fern. The other thing that's very interesting about this one is that the new shoots or fiddleheads that come out in the spring are actually edible. Another fern that does well in this area is the autumn brilliance fern. Now autumn brilliance fern is considered a semi-evergreen fern. This stayed absolutely green in all the areas of the yard that I had it planted, even though we had 60 inches of snow over January and February last year. The fern came out from under the snow looking beautiful. And then the outer leaves started dying back later in the spring, and it started putting up new growth from the center. And I do come in and I take away a lot of that old growth so that I'm just enjoying the new green fern. Now the autumn brilliance fern, as lovely as it is not something that is native to the US. It's native to Eastern Asia, but it certainly grows very well here. It's also a fairly well-behaved fern. It is not one that spreads too quickly. Here next to this lovely epimedium is some Christmas fern. Christmas fern is so named because it maintains this beautiful green color right through Christmas and beyond. It's the only one that I have that's considered truly evergreen. And it's also a very well-behaved fern. It is a North American or Eastern North American native, and it is clump forming, so it spreads very, very slowly. And like all ferns, of course, it does form spores as well, but most of its spread is through its clumps. Here along the path on the woods walk, you can see the hay-scented fern has really, really spread. It spreads through underground rhizomes, and they end up making a dense mat. We're here at the crescent bed, and there is fern in the crescent bed. Some fern can actually take a lot of sun as long as it gets enough water, and that's the situation here. The fern that is in the background here is a sensitive fern, and oh, we can see we have a lovely butterfly here on the pugster white butterfly bush. Let's take a look at that while we're here. He's really enjoying him or herself, I guess. A sensitive fern is one that actually will take a good bit of sun. This fern is probably in the sun until maybe about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and then it's in shade for the rest of the day. But it does very, very well. Now the crescent bed does get enough water. There's a stone wall behind it, and I do think that the area that's immediately under the stone wall tends to be somewhat moist. But this fern is very, very happy here. Now, sensitive fern is actually native to eastern North America and eastern Asia. And it gets its name because it is so sensitive to the frost in the fall. It starts dying back as soon as the first frost hits. It actually is more well behaved than something like a hay-scented fern. It does spread via rhizomes, but they're sort of gradually creeping. So it will end up creeping and becoming a much bigger clump, but it takes a little longer than something like hay-scented. It also propagates via spores, and it puts up these tall flowers, if you will, and these will turn brown. They'll hang on over the winter, and they'll release the spores in the spring. Now here is some hay-scented fern, and this is a North American native, and it spreads very, very rapidly through underground rhizomes. So it actually can be considered somewhat invasive. If you plant this, you have to make sure it has room to spread. You can put in a little bit and end up with a lot. Now, of course, like all ferns, it also propagates via spores, but the bulk of its propagation is really via those underground runners. Now, along this stone wall, there are a couple of different types of fern. And the first one that we'll take a look at is the ghost fern. Now, ghost fern is actually a cross between Japanese painted fern and the southern lady fern. It's categorized as a type of Atherium. And it has these beautiful sort of silvery or whitish colored leaves. It's a very tall fern. And it looks really, really nice against the rock wall here. It's one that cannot take a great deal of sunlight. These actually are in morning sun, but afternoon shade. And they do very, very well here. Now the other fern we have here is a Japanese painted fern. And this one is one of the crested or tasseled cultivars. This one is actually called crested surf, and you can see how the tips of the leaves have got these really interesting sort of bunches on them. Let's see if we can get a better look here. Here we go. And like all Japanese painted ferns, it has a very dark sort of reddish colored stem and these very beautiful leaves that also have a very silvery look to them. As we climb the stairs up Tom's wall, what we call Tom's wall since he built it, I've got some fern planted on either side of the stairs. Here is some lovely autumn brilliance fern. And here you can see the coloration that it gets its name from, because the new growth comes out with this lovely coppery color. This semi-evergreen fern looked absolutely gorgeous right as it was coming out from under the snow this past winter, and only started to die back as the spring was progressing. Now next to it is something that looks kind of like a fern but isn't a fern. This is Solomon seal, and you'll often see it sold where you can buy fern. Solomon seal has a much broader leaf, and while ferns are very much not a preferred food of deer and rabbits, the variegated Solomon seal seems to be something that they go after, and I'll show you some of that. Here's some more of that autumn brilliance fern, and you see it looks very nice. There's some gold Haconocloa grass next to it, and right above it is a tiny tough stuff hydrangea, and they mix together very nicely. Now underneath this lovely wolf-eyed dogwood, I've got some variegated Solomon seal, and you can see I have a little bit of fence here. One of the reasons for that is because this particular Solomon seal is one that the deer seem to like. Not sure why they don't go after the solid green one, yet the one with some variegation is one that they do go after. But in my garden, it's an unfortunate fact of life. As usual, my little friend has been following me around. How you doing there, Gizmo? Oh, he sees something he's interested in. Or not. Here in the front of the house in my shady front garden, of course I've incorporated some ferns. Let's take a look at which ones. Here is some sensitive fern. And you know, the foliage of the fern, I think, looks really, really nice combined with things like hosta. Of course, in the background here, there is a boxwood. And on the other side, we have some more fern. Now this is a straight Japanese painted fern. This is not the crested variety. And you can see that the tips of the leaves don't have that clumping on them. But otherwise it looks very, very similar. And it has that very silvery foliage that the Japanese painted fern is known for. Now here in front, hiding underneath this weeping redbud, is a fern that seems very happy in a lot of shade. This is a royal fern. Royal fern is actually native to wetlands and bogs in many, many places across the globe. It is a very, very delicate fern, and I've found that it actually breaks very easily. And I have this one here, but I have not included it in other spots simply because I noticed the breakage and thought that that was something that I didn't want to be dealing with. I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit more about ferns today, and I hope it will encourage you to perhaps include a few more ferns in your own shady spaces. I look forward to seeing you again next time on Gardening Genes, and in the meantime, have a wonderful day in your garden. Bye.